This is where the fun begins.
Are you sure? So be it. Did you miss me?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to my channel, OG Star Wars. This is your host, Alora Baga, and welcome to Cantina Chat. Hello. I don't know if the lighting in here is working well for me right now, so I might go check that out or check it out and maybe turn off one of the main lights. However, I am happy to be with you guys. I did not want to cancel CAF Chat whatsoever, so I decided to make it Cantina Nights Chat since in the morning I had an important meeting to go to. And so here we are. And you guys, welcome again. So if you're catching the replay, please hit that like button. Let me know you're here. And thank you, Soul Assassin, for coming in and putting out all the links that are important to the channel, important to the platform here. So if you're catching the replay, please let me know. Hit the like button, everyone. So Brett says it's 3 here. So good afternoon. Yeah, so it's 1 here. So afternoon as well. So we can at least say that. And so yeah, so please smash that like button. People are hopping on. If you're here, go ahead and say hello so that this is just like CAF Chat, but more later in the day. So I like to call it Cantina Nights or Cantina Chat. Just switching up the atmosphere here as well. Let me go ahead and take care of this light. Let me see if turning off this main light during the day helps out. Maybe I don't need this much light on me. Let me see here. Let's see how this works. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe because I have the window behind me and I didn't buy the shade to for the window. So we'll see how that goes. So still adjusting, and I'm playing around with what I need to make an efficient live stream and visuals and all of that. And of course, right now I am sipping on not coffee, not alcohol either. I have a matcha latte, I guess you can say. I like that stuff. So this one has a little bit of chocolate in it. Yeah, a little decadent. Why not? It's the middle of the day, right? And some matcha, nice and warm, since I still feel kind of cold here right now. Let me see. I wanted to call it CAF Chat Happy Hour, but the people in HR said it wouldn't be a good idea. Oh my God, that's hilarious. So today's topics are going to be not Lando Calrissian, but he is going to be one of the topics, but Billie D. Williams, his interview on The View. So I'm just going to show a small clip. We're not going to necessarily support that in sharing the whole interview. However, he does have a book out, and so that's why he was interviewed, I think not even a week ago. And then we're going to probably talk about his character. Of course, why not? Lando is amazing, right? And then get into cringe factor, Cade Skywalker versus Disney Lucasfilm Luke Skywalker. But also, before we get into all of these scheduled topics, there's one that I did not schedule that I have been noticing that's been the buzzword used against George Lucas and his movies as of lately, and it's never been used before. So if you follow me on Twitter, you may have seen my interactions with regarding that. And it is the term grooming. So growing up and watching the OT, but particularly the PT, no one has ever in my life, especially back in the days, like I'm act like I'm ancient. I am not ancient. In fact, people think I'm younger than I am. And I thank you guys for that. It's just genetics. But anyways, so people who talk about the prequel trilogy are Anakin Skywalker's fall to the dark side and Palpatine's manipulation. People are saying it's grooming now. It's that word grooming that has come to fruition here just in this modern time, this modern culture, which when people use the term grooming, it basically is about like sexual abuse and sexual predator type thing, right? And so they're using that as something that George was doing, that he had in mind, that when he was making Anakin's fall, that he was basing it upon grooming. Now, I don't know what you guys think about that. What did you guys think? If you guys, most of us, all of us, watched the PT so at some point. Like we were probably, some of you guys are probably still young, very young, watching the PT when it came out. Some of you guys may not, maybe later, a little later in your life because you were too young to remember. And then some of us basically grew up from the OT and watched the PT and stuff. So what did you guys think about that? When you first seen the fall of Anakin Skywalker, did you think it was based upon grooming? Because like I said, that's the buzzword being used now, and that makes George look bad in a sense. Like, and that falsity that he was using a theme of grooming for Palpatine on Anakin. So I know it's a little bit quiet in the chat. I know this is not a normal time for me to go live. So thank you guys. So the beautiful 7 souls here with me today. And so please let me know. Brett says, nope, it makes no sense. And I've heard it more than once within the last couple of weeks. And I'm like, where is this grooming shit coming from? Then they say, oh, well, it's not the sexual grooming or the sexual predator type grooming. It is the grooming that is said that, someone is prepared or trained to commit an illegal activity. Or not prevent, to do illegal activity. So they're using that term, but then when someone is prepared or trained to help in illegal activity, that means they consent to it. Anakin did not consent to fall to the dark side. He was manipulated, and part of it without him even knowing. And so there's that difference. And then, of course, the other definition of grooming is basically, cleaning and brushing for an animal, a pet. So there's that. So there's three different definitions. One is sexual predator based. One is training or preparing someone to help commit an illegal activity. And the other is just about how the health of your animal's fur. So taking care of animal's fur. So I wanted to bring that to light today because that set off alarms in my head, because it seems like people are really reaching and stretching to make George sound really weird, or even to, use something against the fans if they like the Empire, or, I don't know. There's this weird obsession with these buzzwords and with these things because they want to have modern ideologies in Star Wars. And that's the thing, modern ideologies. There's grip. Let me see here. George Lucas being a groomer, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I don't even think he's on Epstein's list, mostly because that's where Hollywood executives hang out, his more mortal enemies. Oh my goodness. And Soul Assassin says there's grooming, then there's grooming. Right, I know. Hey there, what's up? Melissa Lord, a channel member as well, and Jim Despot as well. Thank you for you channel members hopping on, and my subscribers as well. You guys are friggin' amazing. All right. So thank you guys for tuning in for Cantina Nights. And I always say, grab your Corellian whiskey or whatever Star Wars beverage, you like. I like to get nerdy that way, and, refer back to, in-lore items just for the fun of it. All right, so let's see here. Soul Assassin says, it's weird how the Disney fan base are so fixated on sex. And that's the thing too. It's like they want to create some kind of weird fetish scenarios, even for like the fall of Anakin Skywalker, and then some of them will walk it back. We're like, no, he was being prepared and trained. No, he wasn't, because being prepared and trained means you give your permission to have that being done and you being involved in those activities. The only time that Anakin gives his permission to be trained is when he decides to go to the dark side and become, Palpatine's apprentice. Then maybe you can say, oh, well, he's being trained. So if you want to use that definition, part of grooming, of being prepared and trained, but still, that was never George's like theme that he was going for. And yeah, you can argue definitions, but when you really want to get into what George was focusing on and the themes that are being used, you got to be honest with yourself and say, okay, since George wasn't using that type of theme, that's not what he was meaning. So it's like putting words into George's mouth, I guess you can say. I don't know. Let me see here. And George Lucas said once in an interview that selling Star Wars to Disney was like a bad breakup. Yeah, and he was like, then he also called them white slavers. Oh, that's funny. Let's see. Corellian whiskey? Real spaces drink Corban wine. Oh, there you go. So you want to go a little bit more elegant. I wonder if Corban wine, if it has a little bite to it. Since Korriban is basically, the dark side Sith planet, homeworld. Huh. Just imagine having some wine, thinking you're coming in with something soft, bubbly, fruity, and it has a bite to it. Has a bite to it. And then Jim the Despot says, how can Korriban have wine? You can't grow fruit in a desert. You can grow, and wine doesn't have to be necessarily like a certain type of fruit. It could be cactus. So it's basically fermented fruit. So yeah, so you can like, there's so many different type of wines these days. And so that's just something to think about. Going to the thing about wine, so I wanted to bring up something, this thing about rumors that I've been noticing, that's been something that as of lately that's being mentioned. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and bring up, and I'll go back to this here, but I'm going to bring up an image. If you want to say that Disney is applying in their own real life scenarios and stuff like that, and they're going to use grooming as a theme, well, then let's go ahead and take a look at this image here, and you guys tell me what you think. You tell me what you think about this, because if you didn't know what was going on here, then you would suspect, oh, here it is. You would suspect something of this, right? Let me see here. You would suspect something of this. There we go. So here we go. So thank you, Soul Assassin, for reminding me of this image. I remember it when it first came out. And that this gives you those grooming vibes. If you didn't really know the context of this comic panel and you only seen this, how does this make you feel? Now, looking at Anakin's fall to the dark side and his back and forth with Palpatine, and how they just sat and talked like human beings, right? They sat and talked. I don't think I've ever seen at one point Anakin and Palpatine as such. Yeah, the art style is painful. It is. It's like, I could critique this as an artist as well, but we're not going to go there. I mean, but look at how he looks. I mean, he looks so suspicious. It's so odd. So like I said, if you don't know the exact context of what's going on here and like what is being done or said and how he is like has his open arms and all this other stuff, you can really lead into that buzzword of grooming, I guess you can say. Let me see here. Whoops. I remember the image caused a stir when it came out. Right. And I was one of them like, what the fuck is going on here? That was some kind of, like your mind goes there. But when you compare this to what George was doing with Anakin and Palpatine and Anakin falling, there's no comparison here. There is no comparison. Not easy on the eyes, I agree. And then the art style looks like stained glass people's face. And that's kind of insulting stained glass as it is. Some like going through and learning and getting my art degree, I took that, I decided to do that later in life, even though art has always been something I've been very strong with. Because I wanted to go in and just learn and see about other things that I normally typically wouldn't do on my own. And I loved studying the Gothic architecture and the art put in there, and also the stained glass windows. So those were amazing to me. And just seeing the history and evolution of art in general through, throughout the world, is a sight to behold. You going from, using Frisco style painting that, yields with egg yolk or egg whites or whatever. I forget now, but sorry. And mixing the ground pigments to it and how fast it dries and having to work with it so quickly, but also being so concise with the images and the proportions and all of that. Now that's amazing to me. But when I see something like this, I'm like, oh God, just some of this image, like I said, I can critique this. We're not going to sit here and stare at this. So I'm going to take this out of your view now, but just like when looking at comic art, that is something that you read with both your eyes and then you read the conversation. So when it's good art, when it's appealing to the eye, you do get more into it. No matter what type of scene it is, no matter what type of event's going on. There's some Star Wars comics like pre-Disney that I don't care for. Like, I'm like, what is this artist thinking, or the colorist or whatever? And then there's some that I absolutely love, like Jan Durasima. She is an amazing comic artist for Dark Horse Comics, and some of her work pre-Disney, simply amazing. So she did a lot of Republic, and she did Legacy comics, which we are going to get into here today. I was going to say this morning. It's not really morning anymore. It's like 1:20 here. So we're not in morning. We're in the afternoon now. So, her art, and we'll see it when we go into cringe factor. We'll see that. So keep an eye out now with these new current buzzwords that are being said for whatever reason. But when you look into what's going on at Disney, and Disney in general and other franchises, but a lot of people still put a lot of light on Disney when in fact it's more than just Disney that has been failing with their franchises, right? So, but when you look at Disney or you look at Lucasfilm, present day Lucasfilm and stuff, there's a lot of crap going on where they're trying to clean up, where they're trying to regroup, and they're all trying to do this because of the past choices. Me, I'm like, just let it fall. Just let it all go down. Let Star Wars stop, pause it, or just cease it. There's no value in it anymore, especially with the foundation as broke as it is. And I think that image kind of shares how broken that the Star Wars is. And then when you get into the Bad Batch, I mean, I even shared, I think with Soul Assassin, I shared with him, and I think other people too, or I think he shared with me. Well, anyways, there was an exchange, and but basically, even Star Wars fans are being bored out of tears or bored to sleep when it comes to the Bad Batch. But then when you see reviews and you look so far into the 4 episodes, it's all tying to the sequel trilogy or the Disney trilogy, because that's how Star Wars always been, really. That it's supposed to keep its continuity. Disney Star Wars hasn't really, or Disney Lucasfilm hasn't really been keeping true to continuity, but they're tying it to the Disney trilogy on how Palpatine returned. So there's that. And there's people still in denial that that's really happening, because Anakin is in worlds between worlds, and so that means that the sequel trilogy or the Disney trilogy is erased now or whatever. I don't know what kind of like mental gymnastics they're trying to do there, but there's that. So it's kind of funny how even Disney Star Wars fans are bored to death. And so with that being said, now because everything doesn't seem so faring too well for this property, now these buzzwords are coming out. So what? To tear down something to make the other look better? That's been the thing since the beginning. That's been the aim, the focus since the beginning. Tear down what came before to make the current look better. And it doesn't. Really, it doesn't. Let's see here. Which comic series is this from? You mean the one with Snoke? I don't know. I don't remember, and I obviously don't care. So if anybody knows, please share in the comments. Let's see here. And Melissa Lord says the stained glass image in the Catholic Church I was confirmed in has better art than this, but it has a similar look. Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I agree. I agree. Especially those ones that came out when those stained glass windows were first being made, because that takes a lot of art, time, and skill, and learning how to work with glass, learning what certain colors, bringing them to a certain temperature to produce the color as vibrant as it needs to be. So there's a lot of things that goes into that type of art that I admire. I could never be a glass, like a what do you call it, a glass blower to make bowls and vases and stuff. I mean, the heat in itself and stuff, but I do admire those who can work with glass. It's amazing. I did like one of those little makeshift children's stained glass art kits, which is nothing compared to the real actual, making of. And that's a lot. That's a lot too. It's fun, but so I admire those who can do that kind of art. Soul Assassin says it's like the theory of Padme smiling at young Anakin was more than what it was. They're reaching. Oh God, damn, that's right, huh? They're like, oh, she's grooming. Oh my God, she's grooming. Holy shit. Or she's being a pedophile or whatever. I'm probably get my channel down strike for that. But Soul Assassin says art is 90% of the comic sell. The story is the other 10%, right? And in a way, when we go out to restaurants, especially if we decide to, splurge and go to a higher end, I guess you could say, restaurant, the presentation of the food is what sells too. And then, because you eat, you feast, you read by sight first. And that's even with art, because we are visual beings. So what we are attracted to, what looks appealing, is something that we want to get involved with. And that goes with relationships too, not to sound artificial, but, we are attracted by sight first. And then we get to know the person. And then we determine, okay, well, they're good looking, but we just don't mesh, so there's that. Not to sound artificial, but yes, we are beings of visual, visual pleasures. Like that, what is pleasing to us is what we're going to be attracted to. And that has nothing to do with being narcissist or anything like that. That's just human nature. It is, so they say, oh, well, she's seeing into her soul. Well, first of all, you have to get to know the person before you can really see into the soul. You can feel vibes of other people. Yeah, you can have that unseen energy, but doesn't mean that it's always correct or that something can't come of it. But we're not going to get into all of that. Just thought I'd share a little bit. Melissa Lord says, until Disney sells Star Wars, it'll remain dead. Correct. And then another thing that I've been what do you call it? Another thing that keeps coming up, that they keep churning up, is that George Lucas, and we'll get into Billie D. Williams here pretty quick. That George Lucas inserted today's or his politics, or current or real life politics into Star Wars, and they use that one little clip. It's not the whole interview, but it's just a little clip, and I have the interview published. It's in fact on my floor there. I'm looking right at it because I was sitting on the floor looking through it. But I have the whole published interview, but they use a clip from it, the live interview portion of it. And they say, oh, well, no, you're a liar because this clip of Lucas and Cameron prove you wrong. But they fail to understand that they are talking about themes that are in Star Wars that are identical to real life. And George says, oh, yeah, I used Vietnam in my time is the Viet Cong. So they're using and comparing themes of Star Wars that can relate to real life. And then they talk about the American colonies against British and other scenarios in human history. So meaning that these themes of Star Wars can be referenced to any type of event in human history, all the way back to even Roman Empire, because it's all a common theme that we can relate to. So people are confusing themes and inspiration to actual insertion of our real life. And it's kind of like disturbing in a sense that people can't distinguish between that. I don't know what's going on with the health of human mentalities. If they can't distinguish what is inspired and what how you can relate to something, doesn't mean that it's our real life scenario. It just means that it's relatable. So that's something else that they've been drawing up again. And it seems like a little cycle. Every time it gets quiet in Disney Star Wars or something's not going right, it's these little cycles come back again. So it's like a never ending cycle of this. So I just wanted to share that with you. It's a little venting time from OG Star Wars to you guys. So if you have anything you want to share, please share. Because I'm pretty sure you guys seen it all. You've seen it all with the Disney Star Wars fans. And then Brett says, Disney stole the World Between Worlds from the prequel series and they butchered it. What World Between Worlds in the prequel series? I am confused now, Brett. Let me know. And Jim says, the accusation of George being a pedo is very similar to Bethesda Game Studios' recent, I think I said that wrong, recent move to destroy Elder Scrolls 5 scrims. You know what? I've seen a little bit of that. I'm not too educated in that, but I've been seeing mentions of that as of lately. Modding scene to prop up the Starfield. Yeah, so I've been seeing bits and pieces of that. Again, like I said, I'm not privy and knowledgeable in that area, but I've noticed. Soul Assassin says, sounds like glass art is similar to making synthetic crystals for the lightsaber. Probably. Yeah, because you have to heat up certain things at a certain temperature. And if you go to Shadows of the Empire and you read the novel, there is that scene where Luke is creating his green synthetic crystal. So yeah, so that can be something right there. And Star Wars Marvel purist, who was here first? Very first person here. So he did say, force choke that like button. Yeah. So thank you for hopping in. Let me see now. Let me make sure I'm on the right one. So I don't want to lose track of where I left off with these comments. And I think I did already. Sounds like glass art. There we go. Here we go. Yeah, I'm back on track. So Soul Assassin says, shows how stupid that anti-EU shills are. They don't put the effort in researching the many interviews of Lucas explaining that what inspired the Star Wars plot. Correct. And, and then last night, someone was trying to accuse me that I didn't know that. I must have had taken a very different American history class than them because, I basically said that George Lucas was inspired by events and by like the President Nixon, to create a theme around that for Palpatine and other scenarios. And they're claiming that Palpatine is Nixon because George said. And because I am denying that I don't know my history. And then I said, well, Nixon didn't subvert the Senate or take control of the world, aka galaxy. And then so they're like, oh, well, then you don't know history whatsoever because, you said Nixon didn't subvert the Senate. I'm like, well, in reality, he did not subvert the Senate because he did not take control or power over it like Palpatine did. So they can't even distinguish like comparing things. And so it's kind of funny that, I don't know if they're just not wanting to hear it and being stuck on their own narrative, their own rhetoric. I don't know. I can't wrap my head around that shit. Hey, Red Hood Winked. How are you doing? So it's more than just World War II, like they like to say, correct? Like one source to really get into is not only the Star Wars archives, episode 1-3, but like the magic of myth, which goes into a lot of what George was inspired to from the beginning of creating the OT. It doesn't really go into the PT, but it shows that and it shares that George is inspired by not only events but also modern mythologies in a sense to create Star Wars. So there's a lot of these things that was influential in his life and that he witnessed, and then past history. In fact, he was going like one of his like degrees that he was going for when he was in college was archaeology. So that kind of gives you an idea of why George liked mythologies, the ancient world, and history, because he was going into archaeology. And then he took what do you call it, mythologies under Joseph Campbell's the magic of myth, basically. I'm not that one, sorry. What do you call it, the hero's journey, heroes of a thousand faces or whatever. And so he really got into those mythologies and the hero's journey, and how every single society in human history has their own mythologies that has the same basic foundation. And even Joseph Campbell said himself that George was one of his brighter students when it came to that. And then in 2000, or not 2000, 1980-ish, 83 or something before then, he sat down with Joseph Campbell some more, and they got to talk and discuss Star Wars. And then later on, they interviewed Joseph Campbell. This is before he passed away, at Skywalker Ranch. And that video, and I always wanted to sit down and do a review on that. But that whole interview at Skywalker Ranch of Joseph Campbell before he passed away is on Gaia.com. I haven't found it here on YouTube, but let me search later. And if I can find it, then I'll share it here on my channel and also on Twitter. So just nice, interesting bits of information that what really influenced George Lucas, and not only the mythologies and history and all of that, but also his own creation of his own other films. So there's a lot of stuff that influenced George to create Star Wars, something significantly different than what we've ever seen. And that's where he struck gold, because he did it in a time where people were feeling hopeless and, worn out from the past events of, Vietnam War and what was going on and stuff, that this gave them an escapism. So to go up to a place that took them out of reality. So why do people obsess now on making Star Wars based upon our reality? I don't get it. So, hey, Curtis Schultz, what are you doing? Another channel member here. Hello there, Star Wars Squawk Box. Hello, how are you doing? So Brett says, I think they used the World Between Worlds in a deleted scene from Attack of the Clones in the 4K edition. I don't remember that, and I don't think so whatsoever. I'll have to look that up, but I'm pretty positive nearly positive that there was no such thing because George was against time travel. And I remember him talking about time travel. He was against that. And I think I've even discussed this in the past because Filoni is all for time travel and George isn't. And people are saying, oh, well, Filoni is honoring George. He always honors George. No, he does not. Let's see here. Thank you so much. And let's see here. Yay, we have more people hopping on. Palpatine equals Hitler. That's the analogy, not Nixon. That again, that goes to prove that, he was using themes and inspiration from these individuals as well. It wasn't that he was making these people actually real life people of like Hitler or Nixon or whatever. So that goes to show because you can point to any direction that George uses as an example of like what the rebels were and what the empire was and stuff like that. And it can point to different directions because a lot of past history and mythology help help world build, into those groups. And then Star Wars isn't directly allegorical. Yeah, you could say that. One thing that, one franchise or one lore that isn't is Lord of the Rings. And, Tolkien goes specifically into that. But we're not talking about that. But I think in a way, they want you to be able to relate, but not allegorically, I guess you could say. I don't know. So you guys, that's something to think about. Jim the Despot says, sounds like those people found out about Nixon from Matt Groening, the character of The Simpsons. Nixon, George does talk about Nixon as an example. Doesn't mean that Palpatine is Nixon. He was just an inspiration to build the character, or build a certain scene, or what have you. Doesn't mean that he was inserting Nixon in as Palpatine, because that would make no sense, because the events that happened in Star Wars is not even related to the events that happened in real life. Soul Assassin says, watch the documentary of Star Wars Legacy Revealed. It goes into everything that inspired Lucas. It's listed in the chat. Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And that's one thing. So copy paste that clip, put it in your browser. When you have time, save it. When you have time, feel free to grab your favorite drink, your snack, kick back, watch it, because anything and everything that, pertains to Star Wars, especially George's creation of, I highly recommend you dive into, so that you can be more knowledgeable and more smart about doing the presentation against or counter against these people who know nothing about it and are stuck on a certain narrative. And it's all in to defend Disney Star Wars, because they have been inserting a lot of real life situations in it. And so they're using that to counter, oh, well, George did it, kind of deal. So that's the real premise of this all. George was partially inspired by Kurosawa. Yes, let's go over the top and make Ahsoka show have hyper Asian training with Asian work swords and sake cups to show how much I, Filoni, got George and Kurosawa. I know. And that's the thing. And I even shared that in a counter last night. I was like, all right, so if you're saying that what George used is basically inserting, real life, and that it's based upon what have you, then the Jedi must be Japanese monks. Because of Kurosawa and because of other influence of monks and attire and Japanese culture. And then you can go into other cultures that are related to that, so I swear to God, these people are idiots. Vacuous. Nixon reminds me of the Chancellor Valorum. Oh, all right. That's very interesting. I wasn't even thinking anything about Valorum. Okay. Who stepped down after failing to... I know there's more coming to that. Buck Roger was also one of George Lucas's inspirations, correct? Western themes was another. So there's another. Western themes was another inspiration. Doesn't mean Star Wars is a Western. He's just using some of like those themes for the backwater planets to show like there's, how uncivilized, I guess you could say, and how unpopulated some areas are. So there's that. And here we go. I was waiting for this before we go off onto the other segue and talk about Billie D. Williams. So Soul Assassin says, I think Lucas was inspired by the warrior nun story for Luke. The Buddhists were hunted down and the survivors taught a single student everything that they knew to fight back. True story. There you go. So with that video link that Soul Assassin shared, I highly recommend visit it. Give yourself a chance to check it out. Get the cinema of George Lucas if you can invest. If you want to invest into important source materials, I know like some of you guys are trying to collect the EU now, but invest in some important source materials. I didn't say soul materials. Soul materials. And add them to your collection, like the Star Wars archives, like the annotated screenplays of the OT, like the interview James Cameron and George, the science something science. I could see the book, but it's kind of covered. But anyways, invest in all those bits and pieces, information about George, and take your time and look things up. All of it's there. Sometimes you'll find something that's kind of different or not mentioned in one source book that's mentioned in the other. And just prepare yourself in a knowledgeable way. Because I don't think any of this is going to settle down as long as Disney and these Disney fans have any say in anything. So it's better to have yourself prepared. And let's see here. Cloak of Deceptions helps develop the fall of Valorum very well. I agree. In fact, I haven't visited that book in a long time. And we do, like Calf Chat, like I said, when I announced, every week we're going to have a book of the week. So we'll do that today. It's still Thursday. We're just doing Cantina. We're meeting the Cantina, not in the cafe or the calf. So, yeah. So we'll do that as well. So let's segue into a topic that probably is more enjoyable, maybe. I don't know. And I'm not talking about cringe factor. No way am I talking about cringe factor, but talking about Billie D. Williams, the man that really set up this character right here. Billie D. Williams, who basically was interviewed by The View. And you know how they can set things up to make things look all like they always race bait is what I'm going to say. They always race bait. So I'm going to go ahead and share this. Let me go ahead and just bring this up here. All right. So they always race bait. So I just wanted to share this with you guys. I'm going to make sure that the sound is on. Okay. It shows that sound is okay. Yeah. But first of all, before we begin, what do we have here? Correct. And I wanted to get that up on my channel before this, and I just didn't do it. But that's going to be one of the clips that I'll have for future live streams is what do we have here? And then so we can do that as, when people come in to the chats, or if there's a super chat, or even if we're coming up on a very important topic that we want to cover. Let me see here. Source books can't be altered like fake source sites like Wikipedia and the activists that curate it. Correct. I 100% agree. I was even, discussing that. A lot of people, like a lot of the honest people that worked on Wikipedia from the past pre-Disney have been pushed out. And then I was blocked. Not something surprising to most of you guys if you know me. But the thing is that they're all about, you know, people of color, about gender, about women's rights, all of that, like the current people who edit Wikipedia. And so here comes this native Filipino woman. And, you know, I question, you know, something about women and race, and they block me. And I got blocked. So much for that. So fucking hypocrites. But anyways, we're not gonna go anymore into that. Brett says Star Wars was supposed to be an authoritarian. Yeah, it has some of that, which is a theme. You know, so you could say that it's a theme. So, and that's something I've never denied, but it's a theme. So, but what do you guys like about Billie D. Williams? What was your guys' first thought about him when you first seen him in Empire Strikes Back? So before I hit this video, I want to know. The view is still around? Jeez, yes it is. I'm surprised. Let's see here. Lando, only about them panties. Justin Ireland, self-avowed racist. Oh my god, that's hilarious. Holy shit. He is a ladies man, and that's something that's, you know, that we all know. Let me see. I'll make sure I have control of this part right here. All right, so before we get this going, you know, what was your thoughts about when you first encountered Lando Calrissian in the Star Wars lore? And then have you read any more after that about him? Because, yeah, we seen him in 5. No, yeah, 5 and then 6. But like Wedge Antilles, his character doesn't really take off until the EU. So let me know what you think about this man's character, and also about Billie D. Williams himself. And we'll get into what exactly is going on in this interview. Let's see here. Justina Ireland, my God. Let's check in with the ladies of The View to learn what elderly insane thinks. Oh, I wanted to share this because, like I said, he has a biography come out, and so we'll get into that too. Let's see here. She's one of the Woke Republic writers. She literally said that without naming any of Lando's other accomplishments. Yeah. Isn't that shameful? I mean, coming to that conclusion. Holy shit. Oh my God, you guys are hilarious. I'm loving it. All right, so here they're discussing about his time in Hollywood. Like, before this, give you a little backstory in this interview that I'm not playing here. But before this, they ask him, how did you get into acting? It was his mom. His mom worked in Broadway. She was basically, she worked backstage, cleaning, all of that, janitory wise and stuff. And at the time, they needed a young actor for a certain scene. And of course, she had a little boy. And so they went ahead and allowed him to quote unquote audition, and he made it in. So his first acting career was in Broadway. So impressive indeed. Very impressive. So, but then they go into him as Lando Calrissian and being hired during a time frame, and we'll get into that right now. Let me know if you can hear it.
I am just so honored to meet you. I will be honest, I'm just looking at Lando Calrissian in my mind, and Lady Sings the Blues and Mahogany, and just, right? That's all I mean, just incredible. So you did start, as Whoopi said, in the industry at a time when few people of color were on TV and in movies. And early,
everybody's people of color.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, a black man.
Well, a brown-skinned
man. And early on, you struggled to find work, being offered either stereotypical roles or nothing at all. And you write about it sending you into a depression. Did you ever think about quitting? And if you didn't, what kept you going?
Well, I don't know. You know, you just live from moment to moment and do what you have to do, and expect things to not
Oh,
always.
hopefully you guys heard everything. So basically, she tried to pull the racist card on him to make him look like a victim. That's what they do. And we know Lando, or we know, I keep on saying Lando, but we know Calrissian. I did it again. We know Billie D. Williams. I'm so funny. But we know him. You know, he's also spoken out against gender fluidity and pansexuality and stuff like that, which for him, that's like bullshit to him. But she tries to bait him with race, hiring based upon race. And he strikes back. Empire strikes back. He strikes back saying, well, everybody is a person of color. And so she kind of walks it back. Well, she goes like, well, you know what I mean. And he's like, oh, a person. She's like, a black person. He's like, and a brown person. And so there you go. So they try to bait him with this race victimhood thing during the time. And then they're like, then she's like, well, you said you were depressed in your book. How did you overcome this? And he's like, well, you just gotta, roll with the flow. And sometimes things are not going to turn out the way you expect them to be, but that's just life. And so he's coming at it as a non-victim approach, I guess you can say, based upon today's society on victimhood, and saying, hey, I dealt with it and I moved on. So he didn't play that victim card, which they wanted him to play there. So this interview is based upon his book. Let me see here. I forgot the name of it. It's a very Star Wars-y themed book that he used. Let me see here. Let me play this a little bit more, see what they say.
And you just find the ways to be innovative. And you find ways to counter whatever you're up against and move forward.
And like you said before, that little boy got the bug.
Yeah.
And then there was no stopping him after that.
But I had great parents. My mother, my mommy, daddy, grandmommy.
Yeah.
My sister. I had a twin sister.
Oh.
Lady. And they were just really wonderful people to be around and very inspirational.
I like that.
Yes.
That's important.
It's very important.
So he breaks the stereotypes of of Black kids not having fathers and not having a stable family. And then if you guys didn't know, he had a twin sister. But he breaks all those stereotypes as a Black man. He had his mother and his father there to support him. He had his twin sister. And they were inspirational. They encouraged him. They were eccentric, meaning that they were open to a lot of things and open to allow him to be his own being and allowing him to step beyond cultural norms and stereotypes. And so right here, and they try to race bait him as a victim. Always, like, this is the view. This is just who they are. They do Semitic kind of things against Jews, and here Joy doesn't in so they're full of hypocrisy. And he goes over here and he's like laying it down on him very subtly, very elegantly. And they don't realize it. They don't realize the lessons that he's teaching them as an elder Black man. Of like, I just pushed through, the norms. I made do with what I had. I got innovated. I had the support of a father and a mother, my twin sister. And through it all, I was a success. And that is exactly what, it doesn't matter what color your skin is. That's what children need, is a supportive family, a mother and a father, right? I mean, I wasn't only raised by my grandmother. So, he got more than maybe what I've got. I got what I could from my grandmother, who was a very strong woman. I am not a victim of my circumstances either. I'm actually stronger for. And as a person who now, raised, 3 adult children now. Yeah, I'm that old now. Me and my husband, we basically, mother, father in a Native community, setting our kids up for success. Not only being culturally strong, but also breaking the norms of what is expected of a Native child, a Native kid. Go out and think outside the res. Pursue something bigger and bring it back, or be that inspiration. My oldest daughter, she's a pilot. My son got out of the Marines and now he's just settled into normal life, which I don't blame him right now. He's like, I'm tired of, answering to people right now. I want to be my own person. So sure enough, I respect his time. He did his time. And he did it, served very well. And then my youngest, in college, and this weekend, she's getting ready to, she's a co-creator or co-chair for the coming Native Conference and Youth Basketball Tournament at the university she's at. And she's doing quite well. And I'm proud of her. And so I have all that because you give your kids, no matter what, even if you are a single parent, you give your kids that hope of achieving something greater than themselves, whatever that is to them. And you set it up. You don't set them up for victimhood. You teach them of cultural lessons and cultural history and what happened. You teach them to maybe even heal from past discretions. And then most of all, you teach them to be better and do stuff that's beyond them, their interests and what have you. So there we go. So I wanted to share this because it has a wonderful message in here, which probably went over these ladies' heads, and how amazing Billie D is pertaining to what he gave us and his success. I mean, his success speaks volumes. And then he goes and shares, oh, well, it was because of my mom, my dad, my grandmother, my sister. And that's something to look up to no matter what color your skin is. So I wanted to share this and talk about Billie D. Williams in general. And then also, a little bit about Lando Calrissian. So let me see what you guys have to say. So it says, Star Wars Marvel Purist says, that's why he won in life. The fake victims end up becoming losers. Correct. Let me see here. I'm going to scroll up from that and then go back down. Soul Assassin says, Billy's the coolest cat this side of the universe. They can't outsmart him. Damn, now I want a beer. Drink up. Cheers to that. Drink up. And let me see here. So Billie D is somewhere in the middle politically, I'm guessing. I don't know. I don't care. He hasn't really said anything countering, like, hurting the fan base or wildly dramatic, because it can get widely dramatic on both sides of the political views. I like how he is not really in certain politics either, but just his life story. And that's what that's what counts. That's what counts. And so I was kind of taken by this, but also showing that this is today's society. And this is what we're encountering with Disney Star Wars shills, basically, is that they're always pulling this race card. They're always pulling this victim card. And they're always trying to make someone look bad for something that they like to look better. And so that's what these people set up. It's media influence that's doing this. And so that's where I stand on when it comes to that. So let's see here. Lando is a timeless, great character and not an affirmative action hire. No, he's not. And in fact, he does say this in this interview. We're not going to watch this whole video. In fact, I think I'm done with it now. But when they talk about Lando Calrissian in this interview, like, it's very brief. He's like, yeah, I forgot the culture he said that Calrissian comes from, some Middle Eastern or Turkish or something culture. And so, like, if you go and like pull up some of his interviews from the past insiders from back in the day, pre-Disney, basically, he talks about researching the name Calrissian because he was like, I'm not acting based upon my skin color. I want to act based upon what the name and what this character needs to be. And so he did his research, and so he's acting not based upon skin color, but what the character needs to be, basically. And he goes into that. So I thought that was very interesting as well. So he is never about race for him, other than being a person, a human, and doing his job. When it comes to that. So I have respect for that. I have respect for what he said here on The View and how he gives thanks back to who influenced him and did not fall for the racist victim card that they tried to, deal him on this interview. Star Wars Marvel Purist says, back when the Black community hadn't been destroyed by the Civil Rights Act welfare system and before the government became daddy for majority of Black families. And that goes with even natives and stuff too. But there's more into that on the native side. There's treaty stuff that happened and stuff like that, which I'm not going to get into that type of politics. Melissa Lord says, everybody immediately after leaving the military doesn't want to take any more orders. Laugh out loud. My D214 says, I'm free. Yes, you get it. Yeah, you get it. You're like, I don't want any more orders. I'm done. Yeah, you get it. And thank you. Thank you so much for your service. Soul Assassin says they don't talk about Lando's wife and his mini adventures. Correct. Yes, and he was a father. Like Lando Calrissian in the lore was a father later in life. Like even after Ben Skywalker was born, I think Ben was probably about 14 or 16 when Lando and his wife Tendra had their child. So he was an old man. I think she was a bit younger than him, but it's Star Wars. We can't really apply, our real life views of the human body in Star Wars because they do have advances of keeping people looking, younger and stuff. Look at the Hapan culture. So I'm not going to try to apply the standards of that when it comes to Star Wars because, their technology in Star Wars is beyond what we can even imagine. If you want to get into that, nerd into that. Melissa Lord says the Lando books are great, but they haven't read those. Correct. They're only basing them and the Disney Star Wars fans are only basing upon what they see on screen. And that's it. That's it. So I thought I would share this with you guys because like I said, I thought it was very interesting and you could see how media leads this racist bait victimhood narrative. And that's why even people today on Twitter, for example, are still saying, oh, well, the fans did this and that and this and that to Ahmad Best and all that, when their conclusion, the final word they said was media influenced. And the fans that were influenced by these media outlets, I don't really call them fans. To me, they're not fans. I'm just using that because that's what is how they're being described as. They're not fans. Fans would not threaten to kill or harass someone because they didn't like how they acted, how their character was portrayed, all of that. That's not fan. That's not fandom. That is, shortcoming as a harasser, terrorist kind of deal. That's not fandom. So I will never call those people fans. They are sheeple that are just following the media narrative. And I say that from past and even today. And, I had people come at me for that because these Disney shills, basically, I'm just going to call them that, Lucasfilm, Star Wars, current day shills, want to keep this toxic fan narrative to shame past fans that came and grew up within, and those who grew up and now are favoring and sticking up for Star Wars. Shame on you using that narrative, because then you should distinguish between what is a real fan and not, right? So she grown up in it. Shame on you. But I digress from that. All right. So let's get into some pre-Disney lore. But first of all, and this is in Cringe Factor, and this is Cade Skywalker versus Disney Luke Skywalker, are those of you guys who know him as Jake. But first of all, I want to do this here. Let me take these hags off the screen. Mind you, Lando, or I keep on saying Lando. That's how I see him. But Billie D. Williams, he is not that. So let's get into the book of the week. Let me see. That's the wrong one. Same kind of clip, wrong one. And I did not make This is not the book of the week, but this is going to go into what is the book of the week, but it's going to be the opposite end. It's not Darth Plagueis. That was last week's. I forgot to edit that. So I apologize. So the book of the week is the movie novelization Revenge of the Sith. So we get into the creation of Palpatine, Sidious, through Plagueis. And then now we get into the creation of Darth Vader. And I jumped between the timeline. Like, the book of the week is not going to go in order. But I've been thinking a lot about Revenge of the Sith novelization and how Matthew Stover has met with the man himself to develop the movie novelization. And what we see in it is all approved by George. What is in there is because George wanted it. And that goes with Star Wars in general. What is in the EU is because George wanted it. What is in the movies is because what George wanted it. He wanted it. So Revenge of the Sith. I don't know how many of you guys have read the novelization, but I highly recommend it. And there is an interview that I did with Tim on EU podcast. We discussed, and in general, like a lot, and there was some things that we didn't cover, and we've talked about doing a part 2. Hopefully that'll be in the near future here soon. But we did that interview. There's a lot of going on in there. And what hits me is that we get, not only the scenes that we see in the movie, we get some deleted scenes, like the senators meeting with Padme that do make up the Rebel Alliance eventually, and where they're going to go from what was going on in current events with the with the Star Wars or the galaxy of the time, the prequel era. Then we get, we not only get like some deleted scenes and stuff, we get a lot of reference that ties into the EU. And one important scenario that I always come back to, and mind you, there is no Ahsoka in there whatsoever. If she was really, truly important to Anakin, we would know. She would be in it. Okay. Oh yeah, I know. She wasn't created by then. But that's the whole point. If she was someone who was so significant to Anakin Skywalker, influenced him to go dark, like was one of the influencers, and she was put in a position to be very close to him, just like Padme, just like Obi-Wan. But nothing of her. Nothing. Not a damn fucking thing. But anyways, we have the New Jedi Order chapter. Now, this is like the last chapter, I believe. You know what? And I forgot all about the poll I have in the chat. I can't believe I forgot all about it. So there's a poll I have in the chat, and I'll get back to my point of the New Jedi Order. But that's what's reminding me of that. Is, who do you prefer? Let me see. Let me go back to it. Let me see here. I don't even remember what the hell it is. Let's see here. Laura, get with it. All right. Did it even take off? But there's a poll in the chat. It's not showing up on one of my screens here. So let me just go ahead and pull it up now. But go ahead and vote on the poll. I'm going to close it here pretty quick because we've been going for an hour now, and usually I let them run an hour and that's it. So vote on that and then go from there. So let's see here. Home. La-da-da-dee-dee. La-da-da-da-da. And the beat goes on. I don't know why that song is in my head. I haven't even listened to it. Wow, Laura. Wow. All right. So with the New Jedi Order, Yoda goes into a lot of retrospect. He goes into a lot of thinking about the future of the galaxy pertaining to even the twins, keeping them safe and hidden because their power, they are very strong in the Force from who their father is and what he is now. And so they're keeping them safe. Let me see here. You might hear a little interruption here. If I can. There we go. And So he goes into thinking about the future of the galaxy, of events. How are they going to defeat this budding empire and win and all this other stuff? And so he predicts, and actually it's not a prediction. He vaguely sees, or like, I wouldn't say vaguely, maybe, I don't know. But he knows Luke and even Leia are going to create the new Jedi Order, taking the Order in a different direction, and he recognizes that is what is needed. That is what is needed for the galaxy, for the Jedi Order. And then, and so then from there, they go into talking about hiding them and all of that, and going into hiding or exile until the time is right. So that's another reason why I recommend Revenge of the Sith novelization, because you not only get those deleted scenes, which now the deleted scenes, because they're used, are still canon, like some of them. The ones that are not used in the book are not canon, not part of the story. And then you get into, what is Luke and what are the Skywalker twins to the future? And it really solidifies the new Jedi Order. It does. It really solidifies that what Luke does part of the Jedi. And so that's some interesting read that I highly recommend you pick up. Get the book. Try to find. Actually, what's interesting is when you go pick up Revenge of the Sith novelization. Blah, my mind is going quicker than I need it to be. There's no Legends label on it because they still consider it canon. Or I wouldn't say canon, they consider it as a part of their continuity now. Because it is still canon. Like everything that was made pre-Disney is basically canon because the creator deemed it that way. And that's why you get a lot of like these shills saying, oh, it's not canon because of Disney and blah, whatever. Learn what canon means. But anyways, yeah, so when you go purchase, if you don't have it on your shelves, make sure it doesn't have a Disney logo if you don't want to give them money. That's just my recommendation to you. Make sure it doesn't have a Disney logo because it's not going to have the Legends label on it. So there we go. So that's the book of the week, Revenge of the Sith. The last one was Plagueis, Darth Plagueis. Let me see here. Yep, there we go. Thank you, Soul, for putting up these links. And it says Star Wars. Okay, you guys are chatting with yourself. And thank you for sharing our discussion. Soul Assassin says Plo Koon's niece had a Force vision when she fought Vader's, showing Luke, Mara, and the rest of the Jedi, to which she calls the New Order. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Yeah, they were tying the continuity together. The vision of the future is not always set in stone. So it doesn't mean that they're like, oh, well, we're going to be okay because I've seen this. No, it's just, they have a glimpse. It doesn't mean it's going to act, it's going to occur the way it's supposed to. So there we go. All right. So speaking of the Skywalkers, let's get into our next topic and then we'll start closing out here. So let's get into the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful cringe factor. But first, let's hear from this guy.
I had fought the worst of all wars and witnessed the redemption of evil. I have seen balance restored to the Force. But order can turn to chaos, as it did when I was born. Now, with my loved ones and my loyal allies, I face a new challenge unlike any before. And I'm not sure at this time we can win.
Star Wars Vector Prime by R.A. Salvatore, the first novel of the new Jedi Order.
So uncivilized.
I love that so much. So uncivilized. So how many of you guys know about Legacy, Cade Skywalker, and that generation? So this guy here, let me get into this. I know you guys are, and thank you for sending the link for thriftbooks.com. So let's get into this here. This is by Nathaniel Rourke. So basically we've heard from this guy before in his wildly crazy takes, and and all of this. So, Star Wars, The Last Jedi's Luke is more like his Legend Skywalker descendant. So, based upon what you know, if you know about Cade Skywalker and the events that happened during that time, do you agree? Or are you kind of uncertain, like, well, maybe he has a point, but I haven't read it in a while? Or maybe you're like, I've never read this. What's going on? So, we'll get into that. So, what do you think? So it goes on to say in this little subtext here, the subtitle here, Luke Skywalker closed himself off from the Force in The Last Jedi. And this arc is similar to that of his descendant in the Star Wars Legends timeline. So basically the Star Wars EU timeline. Again, what do you guys know? And if you guys are brand new to Legacy, in fact, I do owe you guys the Legacy video from Expanded Lore. I am like I'm not having a hard time. There's a way I want to produce it and produce it for to be educational, both pertaining to the lore of that time and then also behind the scenes. And so there's so much information that I pulled up. I don't know what to use and what to leave out. I'm friggin' stuck on that, you guys. I seriously am. And then I'm thinking, okay, so if I don't use this information, maybe I can create shorts. So we'll see how that goes. So it's so difficult, you guys. It's so difficult. Cade isn't that pathetic. There you go. That says it all right there. He is not that pathetic. So it goes on to a little bit of spew here. We're not going to read. So The Last Jedi's Luke Skywalker has a similar arc to Cade. All right, so we're going to get into this. Luke abandoned the Jedi way and went into exile in TLJ. Similar to Cade's arc in Legacy. Cade also lived at a Jedi temple on Ossus and watched it be destroyed by the one Sith, just as Luke lost his students when Ben Solo turned to the dark side. Okay. Nowhere is that similar. They're leaving out context here. He is Nathaniel. Fucking shame on you. Leaving out context. And I'm pretty sure if you guys are aware of Legacy story with Cade Skywalker, you know what context is being left out. So let me go ahead and finish this paragraph and we'll get into that some more. Both characters cut themselves off from the Force, kind of, with Luke stranding himself on Octu and Cade becoming addicted to death sticks. Again, you're leaving context out. The similarities between Luke and Cade's perspective arc are remarkable despite their differing personalities and the place in the timeline. First of all, Last Jedi is not a part of official canon. And this goes against the character established Luke. Whereas Cade Skywalker is of, and the context that's missing in here is what resulted into the temple being destroyed. And these two individuals, not wanting to be a Jedi, I guess you could say. And one is Luke, no matter how it's being played, in reality, all the stories that present Luke reading into Ben Solo's mind and then pulling a lightsaber out in fear and wanting to destroy it, no matter which story, which version you hear it from, the point is Luke was going to kill. He had that act of killing an innocent person. And then after that, he was caught, and then the very thing that he was trying to prevent, he made. That Ben Solo turned dark, destroyed his order. Whereas Cade Skywalker, none of that happened. The one Sith came in, and I'm not gonna bring in the whole story, and defeated the order. They killed his father, Cole, in front of him. Nowhere was the fall of the Jedi Cade's fault. There's a huge difference in that. And so with this Luke of Disney Star Wars. He runs away, he cowers, he goes, turns away from his responsibilities. And mind you, Cade kind of did that too, but there's a difference. One is a lot older, who has grown into wisdom, supposed to have at least, and should know better. The other was just a young kid who then, was made to escape, and he was found outside like the atmosphere and taken in. And then, and then there in that time, he thought the Jedi were gone in a sense. And then, he was hurt. He was bitter from what happened, where Luke was of Disney Star Wars was basically running from his responsibilities and hiding from it. So there's a difference between the two. Cade wasn't running from responsibilities. So that's being left out. Let me see what you guys have to say, because we're going to go paragraph per paragraph. This isn't long from what I remember. Let's see here. Luke, even in spirit, from never give up on Cade, even bringing Mara and Anakin to set him right. Yeah, we'll get into that because it gets into that more. And then cutting off from the Force. So that also says this in this paragraph. So let me read these and then we'll get into that. Luke could have just woke Kylo Ren up. It would have been that easy. Correct. Very much correct. And then EU Luke fought ancient Sith, extragalactic aliens, ancient Force gods, and politics while training students. Jake just gave up. Correct. And so they said, oh, well, Luke of The Last Jedi, cut himself off from the Force. And so Cade was very similar because he, took death sticks, which doled him from the Force. It didn't cut him off from the Force because guess what? Luke still came in, still confronted him. So there's a huge difference. I don't think they even know what the death sticks are and what they are capable of. So that right there is a falsehood in itself. And again, many people are like, oh, well, Luke just pulled his lightsaber instinctually. Well, instinctively, yeah, he was going to kill. He was going to kill. So no matter how you try to wrap that bow over it to make Luke look like he wasn't going to kill, that's exactly what his purpose was in The Last Jedi. Whereas Cade Skywalker, he didn't go through that same type of thing. So there might be a little tiny bit of glimpses that maybe you think they're familiar, but they're not familiar whatsoever. Let's see here. Cade took death sticks to numb his Force connection to keep Luke awake. Correct. Luke Skywalker from the Disney trilogy just cowered away and cut himself off from the Force because he wanted the Jedi to die and he wanted himself to die. Cade Skywalker did not want himself to die. That's another example there. Let's get into this one now. It's also fascinating when Luke's Force Ghost attempts to guide Cade back to the light. While Luke's story in Legends or in original EU was different, the fact that he lost his way in Disney canon reflects his empathy and desire to help his descendants. Okay, so that's a lot here. So it's fascinating when Luke's Force Ghost attempts to guide Cade back to the light. And then so they're saying it's fascinating for this real Luke, where versus the Jake, he lost his way and reflects his empathy and desire to help his descendants. So that doesn't make sense. So what descendants is he talking about? Jake Skywalker has no descendants because he doesn't have any kids. So that doesn't make sense. I don't know where he's drawn this conclusion, because they made Luke a big cuck. And if you get into Luke's lore post Return of the Jedi in Disney, oh my God, what I've discovered, he is a complete imbecile, but we won't go there. So original Luke shows Cade a version of how he lost his aunt and uncle in A New Hope, but never gave up, recognizing that he understands Cade's pain, but knows it was possible to choose better path. However, this also highlights how different Luke is from the Disney Luke, since Rey and Yoda had to convince him to come out of exile. There you go. All right, so here we go. So that right there, this is enough. This is all you need to learn is the difference between the two, because this is Luke as a Force ghost helping his descendants. overcome. Whereas this Luke, who is still alive and in his 40s, maybe, I don't know, who's supposed to have a lot of wisdom and experience, just runs and hides from his responsibilities. And so it goes right here. I highlighted this. I'm glad it stayed highlighted. Note, Luke's Force Ghost guiding Rey in Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker is similar to how he guides Cade Skywalker in original lore. Oh boy. I got to see what you guys are saying. I do, because I was cracking up during this. Oh my God. Let's see here. Oh, I already seen that. Read that one. Okay. EU Luke fought ancient Sith. Oh, I already read that. All right. Kay took death sticks to numb. Yeah, I thought, oh my God, it was acting like you guys were commenting, and here it's just the same thing I read already. That's odd. That's weird. StreamYards, knock this shit off. Yeah, so oh my God. I know, Soul Assassin. I know you read the story. I think you did. But anyways, Luke's spirit got deep when he was talking about his aunt and uncle to Cade. Yeah, that was it. That was a great panel. That was a great little scene there in the comics. So what do you guys think about this? Was his Force Ghost in The Rise of Palpatine similar to his Force Ghost within Legacy? No, it was not. No, it was not. Because first of all, Rey is not a Skywalker. Second of all, Rey really didn't need any convincing, really, because she was going to do anything anyways. It was just another little contrived plot. And third, he really didn't have any much investment as he does with Cade. And he has experience that Cade needs, that the Luke himself here early on in this time frame has no experience. Okay. Let me go ahead and shrink that. So here are some of the panels here. So if you guys are not familiar, here's Luke and Cade, and this is an awesome thing. This is his Force Ghost, and they're fighting here, which is in vision and stuff like that. So very fun to see. But here we go. So we have this right here. So he's talking to, here's Cade, and here's Luke. Stang, doesn't anyone get it? I'm not a Sith or a Jedi. I'm not like my father or your father. Or you. I just want to be left alone. Okay. So this right here shows how different Cade is from the Disney Star Wars Luke. Because he's not wanting the Jedi to end. He's, in a way, he's like, my legacy is my own. I don't have to live up to the Skywalker legacy, which Luke in The Last Jedi, no, he does not say any of that. He actually mocks his legacy. And secondly, he's going off, Cade is going off of years of the Skywalker legacy, like centuries, whereas Luke in The Last Jedi, he's the first one. Like, okay, yeah, Anakin created a partial legacy because he was a chosen one, but Luke is the one that started on Leia. So how is the Luke in The Last Jedi mocking the legacy of the Skywalkers when he's the one that's supposed to have created it, began it? So Cade Skywalker here, he wants to be his own person. He wants to be left alone. That's it. He doesn't want he's not saying he wants the Jedi to end. He's not saying he wants himself dead. But he's so full of anger right here because of the hurt of what happened. And let's go to the next panel here. And this is the scene of where he takes him back to Tatooine and tells him about his aunt and uncle. So we already talked a little bit about this one. So this is Luke right here. Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, they were killed by Imperials who tracked R2 and 3PO to our farm. Funny, all I ever wanted to do was get away from them, from here, to go out into the stars. Uncle Owen and I fought about that all the time. And he goes on to say, while I was under their roof, I never understood how much they sheltered me, protected me, and loved me. And then he goes on to say to Cade, I buried the only parents I've ever knew. I couldn't give into my grief or into vengeance. Instead, I followed Ben Kenobi, joined the rebellion, and I grieved for them later. Man, so if you guys can read these panels, like this is just one glimpse of this back and forth that they're having, where he's instilling like information to Cade about what happened. And you know what? The Luke of the Rise of Palpatine, I guess you can say, doesn't have this wisdom to share with Rey. So this is how it is completely different. So, and then on this panel here, you know, Cade's like, no one is going to tell me what to feel or how to live my life. So he's like, I'm my own individual. He doesn't want to, you know, be a copy of who came before. He wants to be his own individual. That's a big difference between Luke of Disney Star Wars. And then Luke says, "You're stinking out with you're striking out stinking. You're striking out with your anger. You hate your pain, your aggressive feelings like a Sith." And he's like, "I hate the Sith." You know, so there we go. So we have this back and forth here, these little clips that were brought in that are supposed to probably you know, prove the point of this author, the so-called author, journalist or whatever, that they are the same. But this does not prove they're the same whatsoever. And then Luke goes on to say, even hating the Sith just fuels the dark side within you, Cade. And then Cade says, light side, dark side, they're just tools. Okay. And then Luke goes on to say, that's the lie. The justification that others before you have chosen to believe. You're fooling yourself if you think the wheel of the Force can be twisted like that. Again, for Luke in the peace scenario or what have you. Let's see here. Let's see what you guys are saying. No one's saying anything just yet. Just listening in. And but feel free to say something so we can get into this conversation more. All right, so here we go. God, these stupid ads. I still, like I said, I keep on saying I need to get ad blocker and I don't do it. Luke and Cade were also shaped by the Skywalker legacy, for better or worse. In fact, you know, the Skywalker legacy, that's to me kind of like just a cop-out, because each one of them created their own individual legacy. They weren't really fully tied to a certain type of legacy. You know, so, but we can debate this on another thing. What exactly is the Skywalker legacy? So, for better or worse, Luke embraced the responsibility of rebuilding the Jedi and atoning for the sins of his father. He really doesn't have to atone for the sins of his father. They're not his sins. But I don't know why they think people have to atone for the sins of their forefathers and stuff. Because you don't. You aren't your father. You aren't your mother. You aren't your ancestors. You can discuss about things and events that had happened, but that doesn't mean that you are them or that you have to apologize. All you can do is just be a better version of yourself for everybody. And some people can't even do that, but you know, we're not going to get into all of that. But when his temple was destroyed, he lost faith in the order. So I think he's talking about Luke here, because that's what I'm getting. So when the temple was destroyed, he lost faith in the order, but that doesn't make sense because no one in the order was responsible for its destruction, unless he's thinking about himself. So then that doesn't make sense either, because then it's simply just losing faith in himself and him being embarrassed and run away from responsibility. So that's like putting blame on someone that has nothing to do with the scenario, really. Because the order in itself, like the order doesn't make up, it's not responsible, I guess you could say. Cade had an even more daunting legacy. So again, think about that. Luke lost faith in the order, which, you know, we see because he wants the Jedi to die, which is odd But anyways, Cade had an even more daunting legacy to live up to because generations of Skywalkers had led the Jedi before him. So he rejected the expectations placed on him as a Skywalker. Yeah, he wanted to be his own person. But at the time, he just wanted to be left alone because he was suffering with so much grief of what had happened. Luke, it's like his grief, I guess you can say, is basically blame upon himself. Very different scenarios. This is nearly identical to how Luke came to hate his own legend in The Last Jedi. Oh my God, no, it's not. It's completely different. Cade wanted to be his own person. Luke wasn't striving to be his own person. He wanted himself to fucking die. He was thinking about committing suicide from what the lore was describing. He wanted to kill himself. He wanted himself to die. He wanted himself to be non-existent with the Jedi Order. Those are two completely different scenarios. And try to convince others that he wasn't needed. What others? Oh, other than saying to Rey, oh, no, you go on and take care of it, because you expect me to go out there and destroy everything with my laser sword. So he's blaming everything but himself in a sense. Isn't that modern day victimhood? Isn't that exactly modern day victimhood when you blame everything but yourself? So let's move on. All right. And this goes on to say here, Star Wars could tell another story set in the galaxy's far future with Luke, Force Ghost, guiding a descendant of Rey. Oh my God, they really want to go fucking there. This person, Nathaniel, really wants to go there, which would carry a more weight because Luke knows what it's like to lose faith in the Jedi. No, the Jedi did not cause the problem of Rey, her too, but didn't cause a problem of Kylo. He did. Because he went and pried into a child's mind, or like a young adult, or whatever, however old Ben Solo is within the Disney Star Wars timeline. Which is a very Sith-like thing in a sense, because, probing, and that even goes on in the EU when Luke's learning how to determine who's Force sensitive and stuff like that. But probing and going into people's mind is a dark thing. Okay? And then he acts upon what he's seen. Whether it was instinctual, whatever, that's bullshit. He acts upon it. No matter which side of the story you take in this lore and Disney Star Wars, both result in him igniting to kill. So, yeah. Let me see what you guys are saying before I go on. Okay, smash the like button. Let me see here. Star Wars Marvel purist, Disney Star Wars lore. Aunt Beru is a gangsta, and she takes out 20 stormtroopers while Uncle Owen cowers in the corner. Eventually, they get fried anyways. Correct. Soul says, honestly, how many times has Luke's academy been in near destroyed? He kept going. Right. Like they had they had to hide the kids in the mall during the New Jedi Order. And then again, in the Second Galactic War, when Jason Solo became Darth Caedus, they had to go into hiding again. Part of their refuge was on Endor, and they, moved again from there. And then again, they had to move out of Coruscant in Fate of the Jedi as well, for a time being because of Dala. So there you go. I mean, but he kept on going. He kept on moving. He didn't blame other people and even the Order for his faults. And that's the thing. That's the thing right here, is that they go quick to this victimhood, like we just talked about with Billie D. Williams when they try to pull that race victimhood card on him on the hiring process back in his day. Common theme here today. Like I said, it's media driven. There's a common theme, and it goes into this. And there's that common theme in the stream here of this victimhood card that's being played. Mr. Dystopian says, I still want to know why Jake left a map with R2. Correct. That's another thing. If he just wanted to die. I know. And just like when it was revealed that he just wanted to die, why in the fuck are you leaving a map if you wanted to die? And if you're blaming everybody else, like the order, for what you did and what you caused and not taking responsibility, why are you leaving a map? Soul Assassin says, how many generations is between Luke and Cade? There's Luke, then there's Ben, Nat and Cole, Skywalker, then Cade. I think there's at least one or two. I think two. I believe two. So yeah, so there's two generations between, because when we get to Crucible, Ben might be now almost 18, I believe. I could be wrong. I don't have the timeline in front of me, so I apologize. And then that's where the story ends, because then the buyout happened. So we never got the Sword of the Jedi. We never got the further stories in between. And I know Crucible was like at 42 ABY, and so it could be 3. But and then you have Legacy at 127 or 100 years after, or something like that, or 80 years or something like that. So 2 or 3 generations in between, but should be 3 generations. Yeah, I agree, Mr. Dystopian. It should be 3 generations, about 100 years between Fate and of the Jedi and Legacy. Correct. Yeah. I want Darth Zana trilogy would have been fire. I agree. Like that, and even Jade. And so people are like, there was no strong female leads in Star Wars until now, until Disney took it. Really? Some of the fucking books that you canceled were on about strong female leads. And that's another fallacy that they throw out. They're the ones who fucking canceled these trilogies that were based upon female protagonists. The hypocrisy that we're seeing even today is astonishing. It's greatly astonishing. Really, it is. So let's go ahead and finish this up, and so we can start concluding Cantina Nights. So I'm going to reread what I did, and we'll go into it more. The parallels between Luke and Cade's stories present interesting opportunities in canon and legends. Star Wars could tell another story set in the galaxy's far future, with Luke's Force Ghost guiding a descendant of Rey, which would carry more weight because Luke knows what it's like to lose faith in the Jedi. No, because the Jedi didn't do anything to him. It was his fucking idiocy that caused the problems. If Star Wars ever returns to the Legends timeline, or the original lore timeline, a story could reveal that Luke briefly abandoned the Jedi when he felt hopeless, adding new motivations for helping Cade, exploring these. So they're like really saying, oh, well, we can put these contrived stories into the original lore if it ever returns back. No, that's not how it works. That will go against the complete continuity and do a lot more harm than good. So there you go. I thought I'd share this with you guys because this was a laughable cringe factor, but and also to really dive into what happened with Jake Skywalker in the original, or in the Disney lore. Again, no matter which story you listen to, the conclusion is that Luke was going to kill his nephew in Disney Star Wars, and that there's no comparing Luke to Cade in a sense, like between those two timelines. They are not the same. The motivation, the events that happen are not the same. How Luke comes to his own descendant is not the same as how he presents himself to Rey. There's really no I guess you can say, how he goes to Rey versus how he would go. And there's really no heart to that, because the investment is way different, because you're investing in your actual blood versus someone you barely know. The one story is contrived, where the other one, there is an investment to it. And no way would that fit together if we go back and Disney is gone and they want to keep that arc of Luke. There's no way it can fit. Luke went into exile a couple times within the EU. One, I think, was Dark Fleet or whatever it's called. Shit, I should remember the names. But anyways, and it was very temporary. He was just contemplating like what his purpose was and all of that. He never fully left. He was still in contact with everybody. And then another one, exile, was when, actually there's a few of them, when he was exiled to, sentenced to exile by Dala. And then another one where he goes on sabbatical, and that's Crucible, which we never get a story to, because that he leaves. He's like, all right, you guys are in charge. I'm going off on my own kind of deal. I'm being very, I'm paraphrasing and being very vague on that situation. So there you go. Let me see what you guys have to say. Bane trilogy is greater than the Acolyte. I agree. And Jaina and Zana, two of the most badass female characters in history. Bane is greater than most. And let's see, I include Mitras Sirik. Oh, yeah. There you go. Gotta admit, at least the Skywalkers went out on a high with Cade before the buyout. Shame on Anya Solo being rushed. At least she got to end the Sith. I know. And that story, there's so many stories, like people like that's the least favorable of Legacy. But I say no matter what, read it anyways, because it shares some valuable history during that time. And then, so here we go. So thank you guys for tuning in to Cantina Nights. Sorry that I had to push this back to later in the day, but I greatly appreciate everyone for being here and sitting and chatting. And hopefully you learned a little bit more about Billie D. Williams and how he is that smooth cat. He doesn't fall for this race baiting victimhood and stuff, and he never did. And he sees himself and many people as humans, not just by skin color. So that's something to, praise this man about. I mean, I have that respect for him. If I find out, like, I wouldn't say this, but I'm not worried about politics and a lot of people until you start showing them to me and stuff like that, and it becomes a problem. So I never worry about people's politics, really. That's, per se, but anyways, I'm not going to get into that part. But what I'm getting to is that this man is very decent and very interesting to follow, and he has some words of wisdom. I am Texan. I hate politicians. Same here. I've even said this on the space scene. Like, I'm Native. I don't trust any politician and any president whatsoever. But people really confuse me on my political leaning because of what I have in my Twitter profile. They don't get why I have the American flag. They don't get why I am about the Second and First Amendment and stuff. It's not about someone's political leaning of today's controversial cultures that's going on. It has to do with the history of my people who barely got citizen rights in 1924, who barely got our own religious rights in 1978. And so this is why I believe in, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to right to carry, because they once disarmed my people and killed them. But, again, I'm an individualist. I agree. That's amazing. So, but that's just me and how I represent myself, and based upon my own history of my people and stuff in this country. But does it make me, because I'm Native American, does it make me less of a patriot? No, it doesn't. I have a lot of family members who've served since the beginning, even when we weren't U.S. citizens, in the U.S. military. I even have a lot of family that, or not a lot, but I even have ancestor relatives that fought at the Little Big Horn against Custer. So there you go. But anyways, this lends to, for me being a very interesting individual. I love Star Wars. I love all of you guys here participating with me in nerding out on this and discussing the good and the bad and the ugly of Star Wars, what's going on today, what has happened in the past, all of that. So thank you guys again. You guys are freaking amazing. You guys are outstanding. And I appreciate every single one of you guys here. And if you're catching the replay, thank you for hanging in there. And please smash that like button if you haven't already. Please consider becoming a channel member as well. And thank you guys again for a wonderful time on live stream. No, this is not Calf Chat. This is Cantina Night, but all in the same. Thank you so much for continued support. and I shall talk to you guys later. Have a good day, and may the Force be with you.
Prepare yourself for Star Wars: Shadows of the Empire. The evil... Prepare yourself for Star Wars: Shadows of the Empire. The evil Empire has struck back with a vengeance, and a new villain, the crime lord Shizor, schemes to replace Darth Vader as the Emperor's second-in-command. With Han Solo held frozen in carbonite by bounty hunter Boba Fett, it's the rebellion's darkest hour. Now, join Jedi warrior Luke Skywalker, hard-charging Chewbacca, and go undercover with heroic pilot Dash Rendar and his booming Outrider. But can Han Solo be freed and Shizor be stopped? Star Wars: Shadows of the Empire. Look for the authentic figures and vehicles from Kenner.
And I've always leaned towards if we're going to create something, we should check and see if it existed already to the fans, because it has way more value if we bring that in. And
Right.
It's like, why would I just replace it with something new? So if we're going to do an admiral, if we're going to do a big military leader, yeah, I could create a new guy, sure. But what about Thrawn? Thrawn is great. Thrawn is a character we all know. Thrawn has a lot of credibility. So then you ask yourself, is it right to use him? And can we use him in a way that's similar to the books? Or are we using him and it's going to go completely into left field? And there have been times when we wanted to use things from the EU, and I was like, yeah, but we can't use it that way, so why? I don't want to use it and change it. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't want to use it and make it something completely different. That's rude.
Another happy landing.